Thank you everybody for coming to this. We've actually completed the remainder of the Audit Committee agenda, and now we're just on to item 12, the pensions presentation from Devon County Council on the pension fund. And may I allow Charlotte to introduce herself and carry on.
Good afternoon all, I'm Charlotte Thompson. I report through to Mark Gaylor at Devon County Council, and we sit on the Treasury and Investment team, where we look after the Treasury of the County Council, and most of our time is spent on the pension fund. So I'm going to just give you a brief update this afternoon of what's going on in the pensions world, because there's lots going on. Okay, so just a bit of an overview. So Devon County Council is known as the administering authority of the fund. So the LGPS is a nationwide scheme, as you will know, but it's split up into 89 funds across the land, and it's usually the largest authority in the geographical area has the job of running the pension fund, but it's not always the largest, but generally is. So Devon County Council is the administering authority, so they have to keep the fund going. We were just over 6 billion in assets at the end of March. We've got over 270 employees in the fund. Those are made up of obviously your main councils like yourself and Torbay and Plymouth. But the numbers of employers have been growing over the years, mainly down to the academies. As schools leave the local authority control and become an academy, they become an employer in the pension fund in their own right. So hence the number of employers has been growing. Also in the employers will be outsourcing companies. So for example, if an academy has outsourced the school catering to ABC Catering Limited, the staff has got protections in place, and ABC Catering Limited become an employer in the fund as well. There's over 100,000 members in the scheme, and that's a mixture of people that are paying in, like myself. I'm still working and paying in, pensioners and deferred members. And a deferred member is simply somebody who's left working for a local authority but not yet old enough to take their pension. We'll have a look in a moment about where the funds are invested, but it's a big mixed bag. We don't put all our eggs in one basket. Later on in the presentation, we'll also have a quick look at the actuarial valuation as well, because it gets reviewed every 3 years to see what the funding levels are like, and the actuary sets the employer contributions going forward.
Sorry, may I interrupt? I forgot to say that you're happy to take questions as you go.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. So this is the fund performance over the years. 2020 was despite obviously having the COVID dip in March, the markets did sort of certainly rally, and hence the large returns in 2021. And then we've had a very trying year in 22-23. But you'll see in the 3-year figure, we'll come back to this in a moment, that the average over the last 3 years is 4.4%. And that will feed into the actuarial valuation in a moment. This is the allocation. This is where all the money is. We've got about 50% in equities, and that's made up of different type of equities. Passive equities are where your investments just simply track an index. For example, if you was after the returns that exactly match the FTSE 100 index, for example, you would invest in a FTSE 100 tracker fund, and the manager hasn't got, I'm sure they're all skilled, but they don't have to have sort of particular skills, because all they need to do is buy exactly the same shares that are in the FTSE 100, and bingo, you're going to get exactly the same returns. Then you go on to high alpha, where you've got more investment skill involved, and managers are hopefully selecting stocks that they think will do better than the other stock. Small cap is obviously small companies. Sustainable is sort of investing for the future. Brunel's motto is investing in a world worth living in, which I think is quite quite apt, really.
I think Councillor Reid would like to jump in with a question.
Charlotte, thank you very much. Could you give us a little bit more detail on passive? What's hiding in amongst passive as a headline?
That will be like typically your index funds. So they, as I said, if you were tracking the FTSE 100, you would be in all the stocks that sort of track the FTSE 100. So they could by default be sort of oil and gas companies in there, because you're tracking the index.
Would that include other pension funds? Because obviously pension funds are a big part of the equity market.
No, it wouldn't be shares in other funds. It would just be shares in companies, yeah. Emerging markets are stocks and shares of overseas, and that could include, say, like China and India and Brazil and the less developed markets. Fixed interest is generally your bonds and your loans sort of section. Then you've got alternatives. This is where you've got property, we've got private equity and private debt and infrastructure. They're all invested sort of via Brunel, our pool. And we've, in the last couple of years, set up a local impact portfolio. It's got a target allocation of 3%, but and you can see at the moment it's only at 1.3, because it takes sort of time to build up. But within that portfolio, we've got investments in solar farms in the Devon area. We've got affordable housing, again, in the Devon area, shared housing, battery storage. So there's these funds. We've specifically, wanted the managers to invest within the Devon or wider Brunel area, but a lot of the funds we have are in the Devon area, which is good to get a benefit for Devon. Right, I just want to touch on pooling, because this is one area where we've got sort of major change coming up. So I think it's on the next slide. Yeah, I'll just jump on one slide to just remind you of the background about pooling. So if I wind back sort of 10 years, even before this statement that's in front of you, if we wanted to invest in equities, as a fund, we would go and interview a selection of equity managers and pick one and do the deal and invest the money, etc. And then if we wanted to invest in bonds, we would go shopping for a bond manager, etc. We would do that manager selection. But in the 2015, the government announced that they wanted the local government funds to work together and pool their investments. And the idea behind it is, if I want to invest in equities, for example, but I pool with a neighbouring authority and you want to invest in equities, put our money together, we've got even more money, and we might get a better deal from the fees that these managers charge. So that's sort of the idea about pooling. But they didn't set any sort of criteria, if you like. They sort of basically said to the LGPS, go away and sort it amongst yourself, sort of thing. So we did. And this is what came up. Now, it might be a bit small to see, but basically there's 8 pools that came out of our working all together. And the orange sort of blob you'll see is the southwest. So there's 10 funds, and we created Brunel, which is a company that now handles all our investments, if you like. So if I say I want to go into equities, they're the ones doing the work to select the equity manager and put a portfolio together, not the fund. So Brunel was set up, and over the years we've been transitioning our assets over. We are approximately about 93% of our assets are now under the umbrella of Brunel. The remaining assets that aren't are the local impact portfolio that's just recently been set up, and legacy investments like infrastructure and private equity that we can't sort of move at the moment. That's the pool that was set up. Now, what's happening is the government did a consultation called Fit for the Future, and it's mainly sort of focused on the investments on the fund of investments, and one thing that came out of that, it might be on the next slide, I'll skip back to this one. No, it isn't, it's not on that slide. The government have said that there's 8 pools at the moment and they want to go down to 6. And unfortunately, Brunel is not a pool that's going forward into that 6. So we have got to basically move pools and shut Brunel down. So as officers, what we've been doing is working with the other funds in Brunel to analyse the other pools and see who we want to join going forward. So it is a big shock, to be honest. We generally thought Brunel was one of the better funds, but there we are. The timing of this is that we have to report to the government by the end of September what our initial thoughts are, which pool we would like to join. So we will be taking a recommendation to the September committee, and we'll move forward from there. But
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. If Brunel's going to close down, who's going to pick up the cost of that? Because those kind of exercises come fairly expensive, transferring all the assets into somebody else. It's not going to be a seamless, cost-free exercise, is it?
No, I mean, we, as Brunel funds, all the funds' preference is to move together as a block, if you like. So, and I think if we do all the majority of us move together as a block, that we hope will keep transition costs down. Unfortunately, the government, we've said to the government, this could potentially, cost a lot of money. Are you going to pay? Because it was your decision. Yes, you guessed it. The answer, the answer wasn't a yes. So we're obviously conscious of the cost, and we hope with any move to a new pool that it'll be a smooth transition rather than selling everything and incurring loads of transition costs. We obviously trying to do this as smoothly and as cheaply, shall we say, as possible.
Could I just tease out a little bit for my own benefit? Are these administrative arrangements? And if so, who sets the, if you like, the risk and reward parameters? Is it the client or is it the pool? The
Devon County Council, as administering authority, will still have the job of setting the strategic asset allocation. That is not moved, but in some ways that's all they've got, if you like. It's then down to the pool to implement that investment strategy going forward, and it's also going forward. We may have brought in external investment advisors to help us review the investment strategy. Going forward, that investment strategy advice has to come from the pool, not an independent investment advisor. So in some ways, the job of the pool has been expanded.
Yes, I'm just sorry. I just a little bit more about, if you like, who makes the decision for this. I just repeat back what I think you said, that Devon County Council is, if you like, the client, if you like, but it's based on advice given to it by the pool, and that's professional advice. So where does any democratic control come into this sort of system?
Yes, it will be the pension, the Investment and Pension Fund Committee, or as I said, that sits within the administering authority, Devon County Council. They would set the investment sort of strategy, having taken into consideration advice from the pool.
It's just really a general question about the ageing population and the baby boomers going through getting their pensions compared to the amount of people that are actually in work and paying in. Because when you said it's 270 employees paying in, that didn't seem a great deal compared to the 100,000 members. So I suppose that's the actuarial review looks at that, and is it going to affect the people that are already retired? Will their pensions reduce greatly if, you know, it's unaffordable?
I mean, regarding the member benefits, the member benefits are sort of written in law, if you like, that you get, you know, X amount a year or whatever, and it goes up with inflation, etc., etc. All that sort of written into law. So regardless of, say, how bad the funding level got, that those member benefits are guaranteed.
Where does that extra money, if there's a shortfall or a black hole, where does that money come from?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the employers in the fund. So that's part of what the actuarial valuation looks at, which we'll come on to in a moment. But yeah, the ultimately all the employers in the fund are paying their paying into sort of their sort of notional part of the pot. Yeah.
Right before. You didn't think you were going to get away with a straightforward presentation. No, I was just wondering about, if you like, the investment strategy and how things like ethical investment and stuff like that fits into that.
Yes, certainly. I mean, we at Devon, we sort of take ethical ESG issues very seriously. As a fund, we've worked hard to reduce our environmental, social and governance issues seriously. As a fund, we've worked hard to reduce our WACI score, which is a carbon intensity indicator. We started measuring it in December 2019 and we've reduced it by 68% already. And that's been through moving to the sustainable equities in the main, and obviously our local impact sort of fund as well. That's all our funds really. I think one of the good things with the Brunel is that a lot of the sort of senior staff at Brunel originated from the Environment Agency, and they've been hot on environmental issues because of, you know, where they come from long before the rest of the mainstream sort of pension world sort of came along, if you like. So when they've been establishing all their portfolios, but sort of going back to sort of 2018 when they were created, they've, you know, they're interviewing managers, taking ESG issues right to the heart of that decision. So it really goes through all the investments. So it's taken very seriously.
You mentioned that they're reducing the number of pools. Have they actually? Maybe I missed it, but what are the government actually gaining by reducing the number of pools? And can Devon and Brunel just say, no, sorry, we're staying as we are, thank you very much?
That's a good question. What are they gaining by the pools? I mean, I think they would focus on trying to get really big, it's scale, I suppose, or trying to get really big funds together, you know, funds under management of these pools. So you again, you've got scale, so you can invest more into infrastructure and things like that. We did consider, you know, because as I said, it was a shock, to be honest, when we got the letter. We did consider, do we, you know, stamp our feet kind of thing and go back to the government, and it was sort of decided that it would almost be a waste of time, because they would just change the law and force you to do it anyway. I think the committee level, it was agreed to sort of lobby our local MPs, but you know, the decision's made, and unfortunately we can't change it. Okay, so along with the Fit for the Future consultation regarding the pools, just a couple of bits on the administration side. There was a project undertaken, I believe it was pre-pandemic, so it's probably about 6 or 7 years ago now, called the Good Governance project, and we've been waiting for the recommendations to come out ever since then, and they finally appeared in the Fit for the Future consultation. And that includes things like having a senior officer responsible for the fund. Now, in Devon, we've never had this problem, but I am aware in other local authorities, for example, you can imagine a time when sort of money's a bit tight and your local authority says, oh, let's have a recruitment freeze. And there you are on the pensions admin team and you want some new staff. And because there's a recruitment freeze on, you're sort of told, no, you can't have any staff, yet your costs don't come out of the local authority budget. So the idea of having an officer that's sort of solely in charge of the pension fund is to sort of stop the sort of conflict of interest, if you like, from potentially the Section 151 officer. But as I said, I've never had an issue with in Devon myself, but other funds have. Also in that good governance recommendations is a peer review on making, you know, how good are you at running your pension scheme. The report from that review will also go to the Secretary of State, and if he thinks, or he or she thinks there's a problem, ultimately they could force you to merge with another pension fund. So I better be on my best behaviour. The other thing that's in there is a requirement to put an administration strategy, which we've had in place since 2015, so that's nothing new for us. But the big thing for us at the moment is obviously looking for a new home for our investments. So that's obviously a big bit of work. I'm sure you'll all be aware that there's a bit of a reorganisation going on locally. Now, the only reason I brought this up is because at the moment, Devon County Council is the administering authority. Whatever the shape of things may look like in 2 or 3 years' time, Devon County Council won't exist. So one of the potential unitary authorities will have to host the pension fund. The pension fund itself shouldn't be affected by local government reorganisation. It will still be one fund. It's not, the fund itself is not going anywhere. The members' benefits are completely safe. They're all written in law. That, you know, they're not going anywhere. It would literally be a change of the administering authority. So you just need to watch this space as the local government reorganisation works itself out, and we see where the fund goes going forward, really. Right, the actuarial valuation. So every 3 years, the fund actuary gets his calculator out, or her calculator, I should say now. We've got a lovely lady called Melanie. And they assess what the funding level is for the fund, and they will also calculate the employer contribution rates. It's all based on a number of assumptions, which I'll talk through in a moment. Ultimately, we're aiming to be 100% funded. You'll see in a minute we were almost there last time, but not quite. So we're fingers crossed that we make it this time. But also the aim of the actuary is to keep the contribution rates as stable as possible. We don't want sort of big spikes or dips in the employer rates. We want it nice and smooth. So the valuation is based on a number of assumptions. The longevity assumptions, so how long we're all going to live for, that is based on actuary data. I was talking to the chair just before the meeting actually, and we all live in the UK, but we've all got different life expectancies depending on where we live. So the longevity assumption that's used in the valuation is based on Devon. But the last valuation, which was in 2022, the discount rate used was 4.7%. Now, I'll explain in a minute. The discount rate is really one of the main key assumptions of the valuation, and it's based on expected investment returns with a built-in sort of level of prudence, if you like. And if you remember back at the early part of the presentation, we was looking at the investment returns over the 3 years, and they were 4.4. So over those last 3 years since the last valuation, we haven't actually quite met the actuary assumption. So that in itself would probably create a bit of a deficit. However, the actuary did say last week that there's some light at the end of the tunnel, because they are expecting the longevity to have actually gone down, which is a weird thing to say, because I'm basically saying people aren't living as longer as they were. But from a pension funding point of view, that's good news. So it's how you say it, really. So I think all in all, I wouldn't be too concerned that we didn't quite meet the assumption, but I think other things have moved, and it would have sorted itself out. So what happens with the valuation is they have to predict what all the cash flows are going to be going forward. So if I take myself, for example, the actuary's got to assume what my salary rises is going to be over the next, 20 years to retirement, or 15 years to retirement, whatever. And what inflation's going to be, etc., etc. Am I even going to make it till 65? All these assumptions, and then I get to 65. I retire. Okay, how much pension are you going to exchange for cash? Again, what's inflation doing? How long am I going to live for? Etc., etc. So that you've got all these cash flows going out in the future, but we need to discount them back to today's value, okay? And that's where that discount rate comes in. So don't take those figures for gospel; they're just like for illustration purposes. But that's what an actuarial valuation is doing. You've got assets and you've got liabilities. The assets are what the value of the assets are at the valuation time. The unknown, if you like, or the science is in putting a value on those pension promises, on those liabilities going forward.
I think Councillor Reid wants to ask a question.
To expunge my confusion, is 0.1 year, is that starting now? So this is forward. Yeah. This is not over the lifetime of a person, but this is the lifetime of the pension fund starting from today's date.
Yes.
Okay. So 80 years' time is going to be just into the next century.
Yeah.
Get it? Thank you.
Okay. As I said, you can see the fake blue line sort of goes on to 80, because you could have a 20-year-old joining now that could well be 100 before they pass away. So it's a long-term gain. So this is the fund level position. So we do the actual evaluation of the fund as a whole, and then the actuary then sort of drills down to employer level. So this is fund level position at the last three sort of valuations, and you'll see that our funding level has got better over that time. We started off at 84% funded, and at the last valuation we were 98.4%. Funded. We've also, you'll see, been reducing the deficit recovery period down as we've gone forward. So that's almost sort of like your mortgage term, if you like. You're reducing that time down. You will notice that so the future service rate, that is the cost of buying the next year of benefits. So if you're doing the valuation in April now, it's the cost of the next 12 months of benefits. And the reason why it's gone up over the year is simply a change in the financial assumptions in the background. The discount rate has got more prudent, and you will all be aware that CPI has sort of gone through the roof over the last few years. So that's that's why that future service rate has gone up. The deficit rate, so paying for past service bill, has gone down, but the total overall rate has, as we've aimed, remained sort of fairly stable. So we are currently doing evaluation at the moment. I say we, that's the fund actuary in the team. The evaluation date is the 31st of March 2025, but it is a year process. We should get fund level results around early September time, and that's when we'll fine tune the assumptions as well to get those agreed with the actuaries, and then the actuaries will then go away and then drill down into employer level results, because the fund is one big fund, but it's notionally sort of split up into all the employers in the fund. So West Devon would have its own sort of pot in the fund. There'll be an employers meeting in the autumn as usual. That normally happens around the end of October, sort of early November time, where representatives can come and meet the actuary and discuss their employer rate going forward. I've got there, do not expect large surpluses. There are a firm of actuaries out there that use a discount rate based on gilt yields, which is also similar to what happens in the accounting valuations that you will see. And they've been shown, if you use those sets of assumptions, you normally see large surpluses. I don't know if you've been seeing that, Lisa.
Yeah, no, we haven't.
But our actuary, that discount rate, as I explained earlier, is based on what the expected investment returns are doing. So it's a lot more sensible. So don't expect sort of large services. And as I said, we've generally got our fingers crossed that we do actually, at fund level, meet that 100% funding target this time. I don't think we're going to be far off, hopefully. So this is just a recap of West Devon's position over the last 3 years as well. So your funding level is slightly below where the funders overall is, but again, it's an improving picture. You started off at 75%. And you've got up to nearly 90% at the last valuation. Obviously I can't predict where you're going to end up at the valuation. I'm not the fund actuary, but hopefully it's at an improving position for you.
Could I ask a couple of questions?
Yes,
just to prove I was listening but not understanding, so that's all right. The fund, West Devon position, there's a deficit, if you like, of 264,000. So that's a liability to us, that it goes into the accounts in some way?
So the 264,000 is a lump sum that we pay into the pension fund on an annual basis. So that figure gets calculated every triennial revaluation. So for these 3 financial years, we have been paying 264,000 per annum, and what that is hoped that will do is increase that funding level. So increase that 89.9. So basically what the 264,000 is doing is trying to get you, as Charlotte said, up to 100%. I think we'd hope to be in the 90s. I don't think we'd get up to 100% that quick. But on top of that 264,000 a year, we also pay an employer's contribution rate. We pay 17.8% of all salaries. So last year we paid into the pension fund 1.02 million. And then the 264,000 was on top of that. So yes, that gets set every 3 years. What's important when we set the medium-term financial strategy is we make a provision for what the future level rates could be. So in this year's budget report, I have assumed that for 26-27 we could be paying 75,000 extra. So that 264 could go up. But if it came down, we could then take that 75,000 out of our budget report. So that's what we would hope to know soon, during the autumn time, if that's possible.
Well, thank you. It does actually show the financial importance of the pension contributions that we make. So what it means is that our contribution, employer contribution, is determined by the profile of the people we employ. Question.
Yes, every employer will have its own rate because the actuary will be looking at your membership. You know, how many pensioners you've got, how old are they? Are all your staff 20 or all your staff 60? If they're all 60, they're going to cost more than they were 20. So yes, it is the makeup of your staff.
Finally, for anybody.
So looking at this, because we have shared services with South Hams, this is just... Sorry. Because we have shared services with South Hams, this is just half of the picture of the people that are employed, isn't it?
That is right. So obviously this is West Devon's part of the pension fund. South Hams will have their own figures. What we are very careful to do, and we have done this since shared services came along in sort of 2007, 2010, is to make sure that we don't erode one pension fund or the other. So what we do is we have posts. If a person leaves a post, we make sure that the authority that employs them is the same authority that employed the previous person. So, because what we don't want to do is have more people employed by either West Devon or South Hams and change the pension funds of each council. So we've been really careful with the HR team to say that is a West Devon post, that is a South Hams post, and no matter who is employed who comes into that post, they have to be employed by the same council that originally had that post, just to make sure that we keep that as it was. So yeah, it's just a added extra complexity for us with shared services. I mean, some other councils up and down the country, they've taken a very different approach. They've taken an approach whereby one council employs the whole workforce, but we never saw the advantage of doing that, and we wanted to keep it as it was. So yeah, but I think we can see, I mean, it will be really interesting to see the 2025 pension position, but we can see from, if you look at the balance sheet of the accounts that we considered this morning, although it's a slightly different valuation, the pension liability went down slightly. It was 3.6 million the year before. It went down to 3.38. That is a slightly different valuation to this one, but the direction of travel is good.
Councillor Reid.
Yes, can I ask, the liabilities, is that mostly pension money paid to retired people? 33 million for the 22 year?
Oh, no, that would include active members, deferred. That would include everybody. So if I was an employee of West Devon, I've built up pension rights as I've done 20-year service, etc. So that would include, say, the value of my pension rights as an active member as well.
You aggregate the three sets of deficit figures at the bottom, so you've got a figure of now somewhere at 1.1 million. Where's that money going to or coming from? That's a deficit per annum, isn't it? Those figures on there.
Oh, the figures on the bottom, that is your deficit contribution. So the 2016 valuation, the actuary calculated that for future service they wanted 13.3% of payroll, and then they wanted an annual lump sum. It actually rises over the 3 years. So I've just taken the 3 year figure, but that deficit contribution is an annual contribution, and then
so how's the deficit figure being balanced? How's it being paid off, for want of a better description?
So we would pay that annually into the Devon County Pension Fund. So that 264,000 in 25-26, we'll pay that as a lump sum into the pension fund.
So whilst most of the pension money here has nothing to do with the council's regular accounts, that particular figure will show up in our account somewhere.
Yes.
As a cost.
Yes, that's right.
Councillor Caswell.
Sorry, yeah. You mentioned that if somebody, for example, leaves West Devon and the new employment then comes into West Devon, and likewise with South Hams, do we need to prepare ourselves for when we become a unitary on that basis then? I.e., do we need to move everybody over to one particular?
Well, there will. If we have a position where West Devon ceases to exist, let's just say that's April 2028, for example, then this part of the fund, presumably, there'll be what's called a cessation report. Will it close down like that, or we will all transfer? Staff will transfer into the new authority. So I think it would just transfer in that way, wouldn't it? Yeah, I think as I sort of said on the slides, that there's no change to the fund, if you like, apart from probably just the administration records. Because if you've got, I don't know, West Devon, Torbay and Exeter coming together, for example, to create a new unitary, all those staff records will just come under the new unitary, and then the next valuation will be done on the new entity of those three pension pots, if you like, sort of joined together.
Is that a 2P process? 2P process?
I would think it would be a 2P process, yeah. I'd be surprised if it isn't, unless it's in law, but I think it would be 2P'd. Staff would be 2P'd in.
Just to...
on a kin subject, I mean, the underpinning assumption of the local government reorganisation is efficiency, we're told, which presumably means that the total number of people employed afterwards will be less than the people employed today, which is going to have an impact on the pension arrangements, because more people will probably be drawing pensions than you were anticipating. So are you sort of beginning to think that way of what your future liabilities are likely to be?
Not at the moment. I mean, we did have a discussion with the actuary initially, but when to see if we wanted to try and do something with the employer rates when they come out in the autumn, if you like. But at that point, I'm going back about 6 months, we had absolutely no idea what, and I don't know if we still know now, do we? What exactly, the Devon's going to look like. So we agreed that for this valuation, we would what I call just carry on as normal. I mean, I think you're right. Ultimately, there will be staff redundancies. And currently, as the LGPS regulations state, if you're over 55 and made redundant, you get a redundancy pension as well, which there is a cost to the employer of that. But you mentioned April 2028. In April 2028, that minimum retirement age is going up to 57. So there could well be people that have made redundant and just miss out on that redundancy pension because of the change in the minimum retirement age about the time that we reorganise.
Can I have one more go? Not on that subject. Although it's interesting that when we put in our proposals for local government reorganisation, that will have to include the financial implications of the solution that we're proposing. And the suggestion from many authorities that are going through exactly the same process is that the pension liabilities will increase significantly. And the sort of warning shot across the government's bow, be careful what you wish for. But that's not the question I was going to ask. The question I was going to ask was the one I asked at the Audit Committee. The Treasury and the Chancellor in particular are encouraging funds to invest in UK stocks. Haven't done it yet, but they're threatening to do it. And I wonder again if your advisors are thinking that question through, what the implications of some Treasury imposed mandate that a certain percentage of the equities held in the funds are invested in UK stocks.
I believe that they we've been keeping an eye on whether there's going to be any sort of mandation to. And our understanding is that there isn't going to be. I know they're also keen that we invest locally, but we've already set up a local impact portfolio anyway, so we're already what I call ticking the boxes that the government wants. So, I mean, we have got some, equities within the UK. The majority probably fall under America because that's simply where all the equities are. But yeah, we don't believe at the moment there's going to be any mandation about a certain percentage to the UK. But having said that, I wouldn't be surprised if there was in the future.
Oh, well, thank you. In that case, could I just ask one question? And then before I thank you, I did notice the service rate contributions gone up quite a lot and matched by a reduction in deficit payments. I just wondered why it's gone up to 17.8%. So is it, we're not getting that older that quickly, are we?
Sorry, that's the cost of providing 1 year of service going forward. And I asked myself exactly the same question: why has it gone up over the years? So I did go back to the presentation that the employers to dig out that question, and the answer is it's down to a change in the assumptions in the background. I think in 22 I think we knew at that point that the CPI was starting to take off, so that is a big cost, and that the high levels of inflation over the last few years is a big cost of the pension scheme because all the benefits have gone up by that amount, and so those costs are sort of baked into the fund now, if you like. So it is a big change.
Well, if nobody's got any more questions, I'd like to thank you very much. I find it very interesting and enlightening. And it's got no relation to the enormous note there is in the account on pensions, but it's far more interesting No, thank you very much for coming. Okay, then. I think this section is closed.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Charlotte.
That's all right. Thank you.